So potentially we could be looking at a lot of delistings going into the next year, 2027, probably going into the fourth quarter, the latter fourth quarter. You already see it now. Binance has a warning list they just posted. Kraken is sending out an email with a lot of delisting potentials as well. A lot of altcoins. A lot of this has to do with the Clarity Act and the potential actual fallout of this particular language. We're going to be discussing why you should be worried about this. Let's go. Absolutely. I hope you guys are doing very well. We're going to get right into this. So the potential fallout is very alarming to me, and a lot of ex-posters, a lot of influencers, they're really not talking about this because there are very strict requirements when it comes to the SEC, all right? Hopefully, a lot of the platforms that I enjoy and that I've seen grow over the years, essentially, hopefully they're going to fall up under the guideship and the actual leadership of the CFTC. That's where you want to be, governed as a digital commodity, not an investment contract. But unfortunately, a lot of actual coins and tokens are going to be governed under the SEC. Now that's going to actually increase the actual cost of compliance. We're about to get into a lot of these roadblocks. Will this be a potential apocalypse when it comes to 90% of the altcoins? It very well may be. And I want to get into a lot of these aspects and a lot of the potential outcome and fallout, which would be dramatic for your portfolio. Let's get into this. So let's talk about this briefly. The SEC versus the CFTC. The CFTC is going to be governing things like Bitcoin, things that move like Bitcoin. The SEC, they're going to be governing things that move like investment contracts, which is almost 90% of the actual altcoins, barring a few infrastructure coins that do move like commodities and that are already been deemed commodities like Solana, XRP, AVAX, things of that nature. But the majority of the altcoins that you may have in your portfolio, they're ancillary tokens. They're going to be governed by the SEC. And that is a whole list of obligations and compliance issues that are going to fall towards those dev teams. And if you think that the actual exchanges are going to keep these particular ones that are maybe investment contracts listed, think again, because we already see the emails coming out from Binance and Kraken. A lot of altcoins are about to be delisted. Now, I want to briefly go back into this actual split because this is what the Clarity Act has done. It has split governorship and potentially made it a balanced situation. And there's clarity there. Either you're an ancillary token or you're a digital commodity and you want to be a digital commodity. And I want to circle back because I want to push this into the requirements when it comes to being governed this way post Clarity Act. There's going to be brutal requirements when it comes to the Bank Secrecy Act. There's a lot of obligations there as well with AML, KYC, and then those pre-offering disclosures. That is mandatory on both sides. So a lot of devs are going to run from that. And we'll talk about the actual compliance cost. That's going to be a quarterly thing that's going to actually blow the budgets out of a lot of small caps, and not only small caps, but the actual mid situations that don't have a lot of capital. Okay. That's going to hit hard, and a lot of those guys are going to close up ship. So let's talk about the cost of survival because that's going to be the talk of the town going forward post language. A lot of small altcoin teams and a lot of small dev teams, blockchain teams, DApp teams, things of that nature, right? They're going to need millions of dollars and they just don't have that. They're going to have money for legal teams. They're going to have money for auditing. You're going to need all of that to prove that your blockchain is mature. And if you're not a digital commodity, if you can't pass the test, which is going to cost a lot of money, right? You're going to need auditing. You're going to need a legal team for that. If that doesn't work out, then you're going to be governed by the SEC, and then you're going to have to file endless disclosure forms, compliance costs quarterly. It's just not going to add up for a lot of small teams. And I have to say this again, that makes up 90% of the actual altcoins that you see on the actual market right now. Now, let's talk about exchange liability because the exchanges are already delisting these type of altcoins that are not going to be compliant, that are not going to have capital to actually have legal teams on board and auditors to prove their blockchain willingness, right? They're not going to face millions of dollars in fines. They're not going to pay these fines just to keep these actual small caps and these actual altcoins on their exchanges. They're just going to delist them. And we're talking millions of dollars of fines that could be levied not only from the CFTC, but the SEC to any exchange that may have these tokens and coins listed that are not compliant. And again, there's a lot of money at stake here as well because of the investors that are involved in these particular altcoins and these tokens. But with that being said, the dev teams are obligated to be compliant going forward, and that's going to cost a lot of money, and they just don't have that. So I want to be very clear. Crypto is not dying. Blockchain is not dying. It is maturing. Everything is maturing to the point to where if you're not serious, you're going to get washed out. And we're talking about a lot of altcoins that are about to get washed out, essentially, because they're not going to be compliant. They do not have the actual monetary value to establish compliance-ship. They don't have the funds, and a lot of them are starting with zero capital. This has been the way for the long time. As we mature, as we go into the age of legislation, you're going to have compliancy. You're going to have a legal team. You're going to have auditing, whether you're with CFTC or not. You're going to have to prove your blockchain worthiness, and that is going to bring up the cost of compliance well above what a lot of these actual teams have in their coffers. They do not have money. A lot of them are losing money to capital flight. That rotation has been brutal for a lot of altcoins and a lot of altcoin devs in established situations. They don't have the money to remain compliant. And that is a big thing when it comes to exchanges, because they're going to have to move these coins and tokens off. And when they do this, there's that liquidity vacuum that's going to basically sap all of the energy out of these altcoins, and they're going to die very, very quickly because there will be no money left. And I don't want anybody to get caught up into that web. Be careful with what you're doing with your money going forward. So I'll end it with this. Be mindful of compliance issues that a lot of altcoins are going to have going forward. A lot of your favorite altcoins are going to get washed out. I'm not saying that everything is going to get decimated, but if there's no capital, how are they going to remain compliant? How are they going to keep up with the cost of compliance? This is very important to understand. You need to understand that before you get washed out, before you lose everything. And if you think the exchanges are going to actually keep these coins and tokens on their exchanges and get fined millions of dollars because they're non-compliant, think again. They're going to wash these tokens out. They're going to delist them. And that's when you're going to get the liquidity vacuum. And then it's vamos, it's dust. It is gone. And I don't want you to get wrapped up into that, okay? So in the comment section, let me know what you invested in. Let me know how you feel about the video. Are you going to take heed to this warning? Be mindful of it. Talk to the devs. Ask them if they're compliant. Ask them about funding. Ask them about money. Are they actual capital heavy? They're probably not going to tell you the truth because they know what you're going to do. They know you're going to leave, you're going to sell, and you're going to go put your money into something that's very viable and that's going to be compliant and that's going to be actually used in the real world. I'll leave you with that. Take it easy.